Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jeremy Sullivan. I am the Director of Innovative Learning and Student Supports with the North Kitsap School District out here in Western Washington. And I also have the very awesome privilege of serving on the Board of Directors for NCCE, and I get to be our host for today's community event. So thank you all for joining us. Full disclosure, this event is being recorded right now, and we will make sure to make this available for on-demand viewing soon. As always, remember that at NCCE, we are very passionate about bringing free, high impact ed tech learning to communities everywhere because we believe that when educators are empowered, students thrive. It's not about boundaries, it's not about districts, it's about all kids. And so today's session is one we're especially excited about it. And I've actually been talking with Kristen. I got to preview the slides and I'm super excited for the discussion. But today is going to be about empowering authentic learning with AI. And we are excited to be joined by Kristen Harrington. Kristen currently serves as the virtual learning coordinator at FDLRS, which is Florida Diagnostic and Learning Resources System, where she equips regional trainers across Florida with online and in-person instructional design expertise, professional development strategies, and accessible learning practices. An accomplished author and educator, Kristen has held several roles as an elementary school educator, an instructional technologist, a media specialist, an ed tech coach, an adjunct professor, and virtual learning coordinator. She is also the author of Adventures in Authentic Learning, 21 step-by-step projects from an EdTech coach published by ISTE, which provides practical project-based learning strategies for educators and definitely applies to today's conversation. Kristen's contributions have been recognized with the ISTE 2020 EdTech Coaches PLN Award and the 2020 ISTE Making It Happen Award. Kristen is committed to inspiring both students and educators to embrace authentic learning experiences and become lifelong learners. All right, let's jump in. Kristen, been looking forward to today's conversation and your insights, so the stage is yours.
Thanks, Jeremy. That was a long time to hear about myself. I guess
did,
I should have
didn't
previewed
it
the
feel
bio.
good?
That was a long bio, but thank you. I appreciate all the nice words. And welcome everyone. I see some friends of mine that I've missed for a long time and some other new friends. So I'm glad that you're all here. We're gonna jump right in. Because I know where I'm at. It's kind of getting late. It's dinner time. So I appreciate especially my Florida friends that are on today. So before we get started, I just want to run through really quick how you can add captions for accessibility. I will not be using captions on the PowerPoint presentation because it can sometimes increase cognitive load for including for myself and a distraction. However, if you love captions, there is a way to add it. So you can see that there on the screen where you can just go to more and settings and accessibility and you can toggle those on, and it's a really cool feature that Teams has. So I love that. You can turn them on or off either way. All right, we're going to jump right in now. So project-based learning, PBL, the only way I could think to introduce this is with some laughs. So hopefully you will all think these are funny, but we're going to play a little game called This or That. Hopefully it will work on my forms. I'm gonna see. It may take a second to load. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So you will see on the screen that there are some two things. One says when I get a project idea, I usually, and you have to pick one. Neither of these might apply to you really, but you have to pick one. It's like one of those Gallup personality or strength finder quizzes. So the first one is open 6 tabs, 3 documents, and then forget what I've started. Or think this is great and then never open a document at all. And there is a very long link on the screen, but there's also a QR code you can scan. But we're also going to drop that in the chat. And I think it's actually pinned. Give a thumbs up if you can see the pinned, and it's going to be poll number 1 if you can see that. And if not, I will try to drop it in again. Actually, let me go ahead and just do that. We got time. And then as you vote, we should get to see the live results. We're going to try it. I usually do these during an in-person presentation, so this is going to be a fun test to see if it works. And we'll probably move along in a minute if it doesn't. You guys can always drop it in the chat and say choice 1 or choice 2 if it doesn't seem to be working for you to get in and vote.
Yes, it looks like at least within my system, I'm getting a lack of access.
Okay. Oh, maybe okay. That's my fault. All right. We're going to just say choice 1 or choice 2 in the chat then. So choice 1 would be the open 6 tabs, or choice 2 is think this is great, but then never open it all. So go ahead and drop in which one you think.
Choice
Blocked.
1
Okay.
seems to be leading, definitely.
Okay, choice 1. Okay, okay. All right, that might be the better one in this one. All right, the next poll question. When I see other teachers' projects online, I tend to choice 1, immediately start redesigning my entire curriculum in my head, or choice 2, not appreciatively while thinking absolutely not. And we're going to go quickly through these now that we've realized we're going to only do this in the chat. Oh, we got different ones. We got some 1s and some 2s here. So that's good. I have to say that it really would depend for me on what the project was. But I mean, I have some rock stars in my Facebook feed, so sometimes I'm just like, what? Yeah, I don't have time or energy for that.
It's
All
like
right,
the
next
old
one.
bulletin board wars.
Yes.
You know, like
Oh my God. Oh, I did.
we
That was
used to
not
compete
me.
about our bulletin boards. Now it's our PBL units.
Yeah, exactly. It is like the bulletin boards. All right, next one. Group work in my classroom is more often choice 1, one student leading while everyone else agrees enthusiastically. Or second one, everyone contributing, just not always to the same goal. So which most likely represents your students? Okay, I'm seeing 2.
Unanimous.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so true how that happens so often. All right, and then next, project planning usually happens across multiple late nights fueled by caffeine and optimism, or in short bursts between meetings, emails, and a mild panic. I can say for me is all of the above in this one. I do both. Not as much the late nights. I'm usually not a procrastinator anymore. I get like nervous if I have things. Yes, both. Okay. I've seen 1s, 2s, and both. So thank you, those who are putting this in the chat. You're making Jeremy and I feel like we're not alone here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. So now that we've got through the fun, we are going to go through the objectives because I'm actually going to try to teach you all something today. So by the end of this webinar, you will be able to describe the role of a project mindset in designing effective project-based learning experiences, use AI as a design partner to efficiently create and refine project materials, leverage AI to differentiate and scaffold project work for all learners, and then also identify strategies for explicitly teaching and supporting student collaboration during projects. So we'll see how we can tackle all of those in the next 50 minutes. So what I want to hear from you now in the chat, just you can do one word, or if you want to describe it a little more, what is the biggest barrier that you or those of you that are in a coaching role hear other educators face when trying to implement project-based learning or PBL? And I said coaching role, that could also be administrators, district specialists, any of those roles. What is the biggest barrier? If you are watching this in a recording, you probably can't add that to the chat, but just kind of think about your biggest barrier. And then I'm going to show you the ones that I hear the most often in just a minute. All right, I see curriculum alignment, resources, common understanding of the model. Ooh, those are good. Okay. All right, I see some others typing. So we'll take at least one or two more, and then we'll kind of see how those align with what I have. All right, I'm going to click onto mine, and I might come back to the ones I see typing still. And we'll see. Oh, there we go. Student engagement, time management, okay, and virtual learning. And then as a media specialist, getting teachers to buy into collaborating with me to implement PBL. Okay, I think you're going to see some that align with what I have. So the very first one I hear the most often, which also was in our chat, is time. And that includes both mostly time for the teacher planning side, but it's also time in the classroom, like classroom time to devote to the projects. Both of these can be tackled with AI. You're going to see tonight the time for the teacher to a huge extent, and you can probably already think of ways you would use AI. But then also, even for the student side, we're going to talk about a few prompts and a few ways that I think AI could help with that. The other one is student collaboration. Some of you said student engagement. That's really similar. And we're going to jump into these a little closer, and we'll talk about what I mean by the student collaboration. So first, the most common thing I hear, or this is paraphrased, but a variation of this, I love this project idea, but I don't have time. And with AI, we're going to see that it can help you design the project. It can help you create a lot of the materials that you need for that, create timelines, so many things that we're going to see. And then the other one that I hear a lot is my students aren't good at collaboration. They can't handle it. And with this, we're going to see that I always refer back to kindergarten teachers and pre-K. It seems like a miracle that they can get those kids to walk in a straight line, but it's not a miracle. It's lots and lots of explicit instruction, practice, and focused feedback. And they do it over and over and over. And that's why they can walk in a line. And somehow by middle school, they forget how to do that always. But yes, and so that is also what is needed for project-based learning. And it has to also be scaffolded. Like you don't want to start, in kindergarten with a week-long unit plan. Okay, go. Like that's not going to work. It may start with turn-in talks and some simple 2 to 3 minute collaborations before we get into like a unit plan.
So that's one thing I was going to add there, Kristen, is almost on that slide. It could say my students aren't good at collaboration. I can't handle it. Because so much of PBL, especially when you're handing over some of that voice and choice and control to the kids and
Yes.
elevating that, you get into that messy middle. And, we all have different tolerances for noise level or for mess. And so it's also us having the skills of helping navigate our kids through understanding how to collaborate while we understand that loud collaboration can be beneficial.
Yes, that is really true. It's like they can't do it, so I can't handle it. I like that.
Right.
So we're going to talk now. So before we move any forward, from many times of trial and error of PBL, both in my own classroom and then also as an instructional technologist working with teachers, I have adopted what I call a project mindset. And the main point of this is focusing on the learning and not just the final product. A quick story of my worst experience with this personally was second grade. I taught, we were doing weather. We're learning about weather, and we decided to do weather forecast videos, and we were going to submit them for a district contest on videos. So we created the scripts, we got everything ready, and we were a K-8. So there was a video production lab that typically second grade teachers and students did not get to use, but we got permission. We had 2-hour window where we could film everything, get it done. And the kids were ready, they were on, we did it. They had everything. And some of you that know a lot about video, when you hear my next thing, you're probably going to know what happened. But they wore yellow ponchos because, you know, when you're out in the rain, you wear yellow ponchos. And we had a green screen to show that they were in a, you know, thunderstorm or in a hurricane. So I was a novice videographer then. And when we got back and started editing, there were invisible students because the green screen picked
Loading
up
faces.
yeah. So Jeremy, you got it right away. And so to me, I was like, well, this failed. Like they're done. Like the funny thing is the students were they thought it was the best thing ever. They're like, we're invisible. This is awesome. We're ghosts. Like they thought it was amazing. And I was like so upset because I'm like, this was our one chance. Da da da. But what was wrong is I wasn't having a project mindset, because if I focused on the learning and the standards they mastered, they were using vocabulary and context. They could give severe weather safety tips like off the back of their hand. When I was doing mini lessons prior to their filming, I would show like a brain pop and they were like, pause it. Like they were furiously writing notes. Like, when does that happen in second grade? Mm-hmm. So I had to shift that. It may not have happened then, to a focus on, okay, look at the final, you know, look at what they learn and not necessarily how the end product turned out. So yes, I learned this. I probably needed 10 more NCCE trainings at the time, and I did not. So I had to learn it the hard way. All of you hopefully will be able to jump right in. And this is something that takes constant reminding, because just like students, we get let down when things don't work out the way we thought. And it's easy to say, oh, this didn't work. I can't tell you how many projects I started and didn't finish. But again, the learning still occurred, even if it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to, or they didn't finish. So I always like to start with this on any PBL training or webinar I do, because that is probably the most important thing to be a successful PBL teacher, is being ready for this one, because it will get you at some point.
And you bring up a great point in conversations we're all having right now, especially in regards to AI, is a broader mindset shift of process over product. Yes. You know, like with the resources that students have available now, is it always that we're focusing on the final essay they wrote or the final infographic they made, or are we focusing on the skills they are demonstrating through the process of that learning? And so it's very, very timely connection there, just within PBL, but also in the broader shifts that we're starting to see in what does learning mean and how do we know kids are learning.
That's a really great point. It really does connect straight with AI. Great point. So this slide, I have some resources for you. If you're joining on the recording, obviously you won't be able to access the chat. So you maybe would want to screenshot or take a picture of this slide to be able to access those bit.ly links later if you're not able to grab these resources now. You don't necessarily need these as we go through the webinar today, but it might be helpful if you want to take a glance at them as we go through it. Those in the chat, those were dropped in on the pin, but I'm going to put them in one more time just to make sure you have them. And then as we go through the next few slides, I'm going to talk a little bit more about these resources and how they might help you. So those are in the chat, and then I'm going to leave this up just for a few more seconds. Again, for those on the recording to snap, you can also probably pause it. That might help too, and grab it if you're watching the recording. All right, and we're going to show this again at the end. So if for some reason you don't get it, it will be there again at the end of the webinar as well. So we're going to focus first on designing with the end in mind. You probably hear a lot with almost anything that if you don't kick it off in the right way, it's going to fail. Like, when they talk about managers coming in and it's like you have to start off strong or else it's really hard to get it back. And that's definitely true for project-based learning. So for each of these sections, I'm going to give you an AI tip. This is not evidence-based. It's my own AI tips that I have. So this first one is build a project home base. And I will say that I just recently learned about these aspects of AI prior to learning about these things. So for example, in ChatGPT, it's called projects prior to that. And it's basically kind of like a folder. So you can have a folder that houses everything to do with that topic, project, and in this case, project-based learning lesson or unit. And then it's just a lot easier to find things. So I still have tons and tons and tons and various AIs of just conversations that, like, when I have to find something, it's very difficult. So, again, this is a good time to attend an NCCE webinar or a live training, because they will help you with this.
Or the conference, February 25th through the 27th in Seattle. Registration is open now.
Yes. Unfortunately, again, I learned this the hard way, and don't be like me. So with ChatGPT, it's called projects. And just to give you a little snippet, this is kind of what it looks like in there. So when you're in ChatGPT, on the left-hand side, it will say new project. And again, it's just like a folder. And then you can add everything to do with that project or unit plan there. And what the great thing is that then for every chat after that, you can just refer back to that criteria. You don't have to say the same things over and over. And in just a minute, we're going to talk more about what would you actually put into that criteria and what does that look like. But first, let's look at the other tools. So Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, it is called Notebooks, but still very similar. And again, on the left-hand side, it's called New Notebook. Looks really similar. It's just a notebook instead of a project. And then in Google Gemini, it is called a gem. And here, if you look at this one's a little different, you would go to the gems, my gems, and then it just says new gem with a button there. But all of these work very similar. And jump in. And I just want to show you that the second resource I gave you is a how-to for each of those. If you're using Grok or something else, I apologize. I'm not familiar with those. But if you want to choose either Copilot, Gemini, or ChatGPT, there is that resource that walks you through how to set up the folder, again, which might be called a project gem or notebook, depending on the tool that you use. And just to let you know, like, what are you going to actually put in there? Well, my advice would be to use this project template. This is going to be a little tedious at first, but you're going to list everything about your classroom, what resources and materials you have, what students do you have in your classroom. You know, if you have a student who uses a wheelchair, you may need to put that in there. If you have a student with ASD, a student who likes to work alone mostly, all of that information. The great news is once you do your first project of the year, you can keep copying most of this in for all your additional projects. You'll just change out the standards, the topic, and any specific constraints for that project. But everything is there for you and it's editable. So if you don't like some of the things or it doesn't match your district or school's requirements, you can change that, edit that project template however you'd like. You don't have to put this much information in, but it's just helpful because then you don't have to keep adding things over and over every time you start a new prompt. So that's why I really like that idea of putting it in one time and then you're done for everything you request for this project that you're going to do. And if you have any questions so far, drop it in the chat, because I know that's going really fast so far, but I'm going to keep moving it along. So we're going to look at one way. So we are talking about launching a project. And the biggest thing I always tried to do was a creative way. You know, there's always like it used to be the KWL charts. There's many variation. Like, what do I know? What do I want to learn? You know, what do I already know? And those are great, but I would try to, for each project, to make it specific to that project. How can I wow the kids and get them hooked right away and get them excited about this? And that is something that AI can help you with. So for this initial one, I created I actually used Gemini for this one. So that I created a gem and it was called Hacking Science Labs PBL unit. I chose this one today because this, as long as you teach science in some capacity, this could be used from pre-K all the way, well, maybe not pre-K, maybe K1 all the way to 12th grade. And so once I put that project in, this is what I asked AI. I said, using the project, and this is up here in the gray box prompt if you want to follow along, but using the project criteria above, because I already dropped my template in there, create the following: a creative introduction to launch this project with students, also a rubric and checklist, and 3 potential experiments that students can perform that align with content standards and the project criteria. So let's kind of look through. I'm going to press play. There's no sound on this video. It's just going to be me kind of talking through and explaining what I see here. So far it says it's a pleasure to help you launch it based on your criteria, which included student with dyslexia, student with ASD, and mobility needs. Here is what they came up with for the project launch. So they actually gave us a driving question, which I don't know about you, but that is probably the thing I struggle with the most, is coming up with a driving question for a project. So it's, how can we use movie magic to teach the world the secrets of matter? Ooh, matter. Okay. So the hook here is really cool. Attention, science hackers. Our lab has a big problem. People all over the world are confused. We already can see that this is a great language for second graders. It probably wouldn't work with 12th graders, but we said it was second graders, so they've aligned it for them. It's talking about some matter. We need experts like you, so they're already hooking the students in. And then I'm going to just keep going through here. It's going to give us some assessment tools. It says student-friendly rubric, and here it goes. So it actually says I showed, let's go to scientific process. We're going to do the master. I explained my plan, I made a guess, and I showed my results clearly. Now, this is where you might come in. If you know that you've already introduced like the word hypothesis, say, to your second graders, you maybe would change that from guess to hypothesis. I did not adjust this at all. I wanted you to see what the raw prompts results would be, but we would definitely want to refine this. Then for words, I used words like solid, liquid, gas, and property perfectly to explain my work. And then I clearly explained how matter changes like solid, liquid. They made a student hacker checklist. Again, I maybe wouldn't keep the hacker part, but it might be fun. And let's see, there we go. And it has a little checklist there that also they can have. But this is my favorite part, because again, when I would launch science experiments, it's so hard to find easy ones that are quick and don't require a lot of materials. And especially the first time students are doing this, because they're going to actually create a video explaining the experiment. So that's a lot of cognitive load. They have to know the scientific process, the content, and how to make a video. So we definitely want to start simple with this. So it talks, this first one is just ice cubes. It looks like it's the only material they would need. The next one, colored liquid. So maybe just food coloring and water. And then the second one, the last one's a little more involved, but still just like vinegar, baking soda, and a balloon. So all pretty simple, all materials that wouldn't cost a lot of money, that are easy to get. So I would say that that was pretty successful for the first one. So let's kind of take a look at what are some other things. Oh, really quick. So I just want to let you know that prompt is available on that third resource there, along with all the other ones I'm going to show you. And there's a few on there that we don't even get to tonight. So there's a lot of prompts already there. The goal is that that would spark for you to start creating your own. Because by no means is what I gave you every single thing you might need for a PBL unit. But it's just all the ones I could think of there for you already ready to go. But hoping that you would learn from that how to create your own prompts. And many of you are probably already experts at this and already doing this as well. So we're talking
Kristen,
about launching.
I want to give you a quick shout out for modeling good AI ethical practices, because we want to engage with AI, but we also want to question AI and make sure we're seeing what it's telling us, because we need the humans to be that final touch point. And so it's great to see what it comes back with, but then it's super important that we come back in as the human, as the one who knows the kids, works with the kids, and is alive and making it work what's best for those students that we're serving. So really nice job on that. And I also want to give a shout out. You brought up just the cognitive load that can come gets placed on kids in a PBL unit. And one thing I always recommend when I'm working with teachers is to think about what I heard once is called the split brain mindset. And when
Oh,
you're
that's
using
great.
like educational technology or a new tool in the classroom, if you're using a new tool, that's going to require higher cognitive load for the kids because they have to absorb how to use the tool. So you want to use
Yes.
it with content that they're familiar with, like recall information, review stuff. Whereas then if your goal is learning new content and you're wanting them to engage with technology, we want that technology to be tech that they've familiar with, they've played with, so their brains can be devoted to that higher concern, the standards, as opposed to the tool. And you surface that beautifully. So just giving you a little call out.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much. I love that. So it sounds like what you're saying is, let's say that for this particular project, second graders have iPads. They're going to be using, like, say, iMovie or Apple Clips on their iPad. But at the beginning of the year, you would want to engage them in like creating like getting to know you videos or something like low academic risk. So
Exactly.
that way, when you start the science unit, they're already familiar with that tool. I love that. So
Yeah, I
great.
always just think of it as a seesaw in my brain. New tool, lower level thinking, and then reverse. Higher level thinking has to be an old tool, so their brain's free to do the real thinking.
Yes. And that's probably another reason why teachers at the beginning say they can't collaborate because of
Mm-hmm.
that cognitive load is like
Because
they're trying to teach too many things at once.
they have to
And any
learn
of us would
how
have
to
anxiety and
collaborate.
problems. I love that. Since you mentioned best practices, it just sparked something for me. One thing that you might notice throughout this is I am not putting any personally identifiable information about my students in there. I said that there was a student with ASD, a student with a mobility issue, but it doesn't have their names at all or any information, their student ID, anything. And that's really important as well.
Yes.
Even if you have a district approved AI tool, I just think it's best practice to just avoid that. Because you just don't know. But again, especially if you don't have a district approved, where your district has maybe signed an agreement with either Microsoft, Google, or another tool, you definitely want to be careful with that. So I'm glad you brought it up because I forgot to mention that.
People always like to talk about the walled gardens, and I always like to say walled gardens have walls that can be knocked down. So there's still a
Yeah.
little, we should still be cautious.
It's not needed, so why put it there? If you know
Right.
who your student is, you don't need to put their information there. So yeah, there's so many ways to use AI without having to have that in there. So we're talking about launching a project. I just want to give you a few other ideas. So we just showed you one on creative ways to launch a project. Another great thing is that AI can generate examples and non-examples. So once you've done these a few years, you might have student examples, but if it's your first time launching a project, you're going to need help in creating your own. Again, no one has time for that. So this is where AI can help, along with you jumping in and having to support that because they may not do the greatest job with it the first time. You might have to edit, but editing an example or non-example is a lot easier than creating your own. And then also identifying the purpose or why. One thing I always try to do when I'm working with different students is like they need to know the purpose or the why beyond just a good grade. And it's especially hard with high school, especially hard with the highest achiever AP and honor students. They're the worst sometimes in the best way. It just takes help because they've been trained to focus on the grade and what do I need to do to get an A? And we want to get rid of that because we want them to be lifelong learners and focus on the learning and not just the grade. So there has to be another purpose. And if it's hard to identify that or connect with what's relevant to those students, that age group, AI can help with that as well. Um, we do have a prompt in the handout that I shared with you for launching a project, and there's also one for examples and non-examples. So giving you a chance to try to create your own for that purpose or why, because that one's not on there. Okay, so we're going to move along to designing project materials. This is probably the part that takes the longest once you have the idea, a solid idea. And probably the thing that is a hang up on time for teachers because it can just seem like a lot. I know for me, it would take a lot of time to get ready, but once I did it, I just enjoyed my students so much more. You are taking a back seat and you just get to walk around and see, and they're going to do so many things that you didn't even know they could do. Like they're going to rise above your expectations when you actually have the organization in place and the project materials. But it can be a lot, especially those of you that have kids and have a lot of other things going on. Like, to think about doing this on your own time can be daunting. So this is where AI really, really is going to help. So time for my second AI tip, and that is using AI for first drafts. We've already talked about this a little bit, but some AI experts call it human in the loop, or humans in the loop. It just means that you don't ever want to create something in AI and then just hand it over to your students' parents or anyone else. You want to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and most likely you're going to have revisions there because it's not going to quite nail exactly what you wanted. So that is just really important when using AI. And sometimes people will see the original output from AI and then they think, oh, this is terrible, I'm never going to use it. You have to keep prompting, and the AI will start to learn you and what your needs are, and then you'll be able to prompt it less and less. But it does take time.
Yeah, Kristen, out here in Washington, we have our state guidance. We were very lucky and beneficial to have a state that really issued a really some robust guidance early on to help guide us our districts through the system. And we had adopted they call it the HAIH framework, and it's human inquiry, AI, human empowerment. So you start and end with what's most important, being the human that's partnered with AI to get you to that level that maybe you weren't able to reach before, saving the time, increasing your efficiencies, larger scale data analysis possibilities, whatever. But I love that, because I love that frame that it is still human starts it, human ends it, because we own whatever we do with it.
So HAIH. I love that. HAIH. That's really cool. I had not heard of that before, and I really like that. Um, so we talked earlier about time management, and I just want to put up a couple things that can help, because again, we just showed a lot of ways that are about to show more where AI can help with time management for you on the educator side, or the coach, or whoever's developing the project, their side. But in the classroom, taking time is that's a harder one to reduce that barrier. So the first thing I want to talk about is incorporating multiple standards. Now, this is easier in an elementary class or in a classroom with a teacher that has students throughout the day and not just for one class period. Those of you that are secondary, I know this is more challenging, but the more standards you can incorporate, the better. You're going to have your core content standards. Like, for example, in the weather project I told you about, it was weather. But we also maybe had added some scientific process standards to that. And it also included some ELA standards, because they were writing scripts and they had to practice grammar. And I might have had a mini lesson on like comma use or something if they were struggling with that. But the more standards you can incorporate, you can justify that longer period of time to get that project completed. You're going to want, again, if you're talking about cognitive load again, if you're going to incorporate more standards, you want to make sure most of them are review. And then again, you have that cycle where you're reiterating throughout the year those standards over and over again. With the video project, the science tutorial project I mentioned earlier, the goal would be that you're doing that over and over. So by the end of the year, they know the scientific process or scientific method like inside out, because they've done it so many times, and it's just new content every time, and they're practicing vocabulary and context over and over again. But again, multiple standards. The other thing is using AI to create clear, student-friendly project timelines. It's okay that you have a timeline and you know what's supposed to happen, but your students, even down to the level of kindergarten, need to also know. But that's going to look different depending on the grade level. And again, this is something that's often missed because it takes time to create, but now you have AI to help you with those timelines by just putting in what you're trying to achieve, how long you have, and letting AI help you to create those timelines.
One
So we talked
thing
about
on the standards stuff, one thing that I love about when I'm using AI to like plan long range instructional design units or stuff like that is, we're always focusing on alignment, because we have so much that we have to cover across the K-12 sphere, and we're pulling as many things into the same alignment, whether it's from our school improvement plan goals or district improvement plan or our state standards or if our state SEL standards, or if your district has maybe adopted the ISTE standards and the ISTE teacher and the student standards, and we want to make sure we're addressing that. There's so many different things. I just love when I'm using something like a gem, or I use Notebook LM in Google, very similar to what it sounds like Notebook is
Yep.
in Copilot, is I load all of that and then I ask for authentic alignment for where it should fall into it. So it's no longer like, all right, kids, now we're going to have a lesson on grit. It's like the lesson on grit is woven into the instructional materials already because it helps me with that alignment.
Oh, that is amazing. And like you said, like for UDL, or there's so many ways that you
Exactly.
can integrate and have it flow naturally. I love that. And I bet that again, like we talked about training AI, the more you do that, the better it probably gets at
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
at over time. Oh, that is amazing. So this slide here shows the multi-standard prompt. So this is the prompt that is there. And a lot of these things are editable. So the thing that is there for everyone, you're an instructional design assistant supporting authentic project-based learning. Again, you could adapt that, but I think it will work overall. But where you're going to adjust would be your standards here, the time frame that you need, and the context. And then it should then generate the multi-standards for you. So looking here, this is one example that I put in already and have the results. I have not edited it, and this was the very first time I did it. So all of these were one and done. Like I did not have to go back and refilm to find a better prompt or a better prompt results. These are all like exactly what came out from these prompts. So clicking through, it actually came up with a project called Voices of Our Community. This was for high school. The driving question: how can we use storytelling to amplify the voices of people in our community? And basically, one thing I will say is this is going to take a little bit of work for your students. So this would be something you'd want to make sure, like, do you have local museums? Do you have these things available to your, depending on where you live? If you're in a small rural community, you maybe would need to revise this. But just seeing how it brought, and look at this, how many standards it's bringing in. Again, you would want to make sure that you had already reviewed a lot of these, but it has the primary standard, which is analyze how figurative language contributes to tone and meaning. And then it's just already for you added in. I kind of want to go back and revise my prompt now, Jeremy, based on what you said. Is like, how did you word it? That not naturally, how it would flow
Oh, I just say,
intentionally. I forget how you
yeah.
worded it.
Yeah, I just say like, so I'll walk you through a quick little thing that we just did. We did a little bit of
Okay.
a data analysis on classroom SEL scores because our kids did a screener. And so just looking at the big picture, what were the themes that showed up within that classroom? And then I worked with the teacher and we took those themes, looked at their upcoming third grade unit and said, because we have a bot similar to this trained with our curriculum materials, and just said third grade unit 5 coming up, classroom really needs to work on emotional regulation, and I forget what the other one was. How can we integrate those conversations authentically based on the instructional materials for each day? And then it just went through the unit plan and was like, on day 3 you're reading this would be a good time to surface this question. On day 6 you're looking at this, ask the kids this question. And so it really gives you that authentic instead of siloed. I'm addressing SEL from 9 to 9:30. We're addressing it throughout the lesson more authentically, and it just, no one has the time to analyze materials and align them in that way. Yet we do ask our teachers for that alignment and that integration. And I just think AI is such a wonderful way to help them get to that rich instructional design.
Yeah. Do you think now, Jeremy, and I think this, like, and those in the can weigh in the chat, I feel like, how did we ever do it now without AI? Like, it's only been a couple years, but I already feel like, how did we ever do? It's like the internet, like before the internet. Like, how did we do it? I definitely feel like that.
It's more
Um,
like, for me, it's, because we all still have the skills that we had before AI landed in our toolbox.
True.
For me, it would be like, oh my gosh, my productivity's going back to 2022. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Like that's the mindset, is like what we would lose at this point just from how far we've gone. And yes, I mean, obviously, ethical concerns, guardrails are an absolute must. Data privacy, very top of mind. Environmental concerns and the cost of our natural resources, all of that has to be a part of the conversation. And what we are able to accomplish for kids and to meet the needs of all kids, designing for the edges. Todd Rose talked about the myth of average and designing
Yes,
learning spaces to the edges. AI is letting us do that in a way that we haven't been able to before.
I love that video, that TED Talk. Yeah, that's a really good point, a really great point. So this slide shows how we can partner with AI for project materials. These are just a few other examples. So it can create to-do lists for you, both for you and your students. Many lessons. I love this one because this is one that sometimes these are like just in time, like you see a need. And then normally you'd be like, well, that would have been nice if I would have known they were going to make that error and I could have done a mini lesson. Well, now you can do that. Rubrics and checklists, of course. Again, I think that can be a little daunting, but you have it. Choice board, project choice boards. There's that UDL in there. And then I love this one, and we're going to show this example in a minute. Collaboration assessments and checklists. This gets back to that they don't know how to collaborate. Well, they need practice and explicit instruction and real feedback. And then
I have to
practice
give
schedule. I
a
think you talked about that in the chat, the schedules.
Oh yeah, Jared, who is not Jared, that's your friend
Stacy.
Stacy. I was gonna say Gracie, but that's my daughter's name. Stacy, yeah. So Stacy was sharing that they hadn't used AI to create a timeline, because they just take what they got and then try to adjust it and make it work. But hey, if we can have AI do it. And then I shared, a teacher reached out and had like, I was super frustrated, had 2 unplanned assemblies. I'm behind before the end of the semester. I asked AI what to do and it helped me make sense of it. Um, but one thing I got to get, I mentioned that I use Notebook LM within the Google Workspace. When it comes to creating materials, it's one of my favorite things because you load your resources and materials with a click of a button. You can have a podcast that is 2 humans interacting about your content. You can call into the podcast and engage with the content. You can create videos. You can
That's
create
so
quick
cool.
infographics. And so when we're talking like PBL resources, the ability to just be like, here are my materials, here are the different resources, like it it blows my mind what can be created now that just gets taken off of off of that teacher plate that's really trying to design these incredible experiences, but often bogging themselves down, like you said, late into the night or in between every meeting and every single break that they get trying to build the stuff.
I agree. And those of you listening, if you have not tried Notebook LM and you have Google and you're allowed to use it, I highly recommend it. And I agree. And the podcast the first time I heard it, totally blew my mind. They sound like real podcasters. It's totally amazing. So on this slide, the ones that you will have prompts for available, again, if you jumped in late or didn't capture the resources, I'm going to show it again at the end. But there's mini lessons, the rubrics and checklists, and then those collaboration assessments. We're of course, this is always me. You don't know me that well, Jeremy, but I always run over. But I'm gonna try to get this done in the next 11 minutes.
Well, and I'll
So
quit talking.
no, it's okay. It's okay. It's my fault. It's not you. So the next thing we have a prompt for collaboration. So there's 2 ways that I like to collaborate. But this one that I have here, there's actually 2 in the template and the list of prompts. But the one we're going to tackle today is actually monitoring students and looking for positive interactions, which could include acceptances, clarifications, and elaborations, and then negative interactions, rejections, ignoring, and lack of response. And if any of this isn't clear to you, we asked AI to clarify it. So not only are they going to generate the template where you can monitor students for which I put 3 minutes at a time. You could even lessen that. I've done even like 1.5 minutes, and you can still get a lot out of it. And you would rotate from group to group. You may not get to every group in one day class period, but if you try to like monitor, it's just amazing what you can learn when you're intentionally watching for the interactions of your students. So this prompt asks not only to generate the template, but also explain, because if you're a coach, an administrator, a PBL innovation specialist, whatever your title was, Jeremy. You have an amazing title.
Who knows? Just throw words at a wall.
Yeah. If you have one of those cool titles that I don't have, you may be the one creating this for educators to use. And so that's why it included that part as well of explaining why are we asking this? What are we looking for? And then just quickly kind of going through this. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. You can see it's actually explaining the interactions there, and it's which is really cool. And then it has the tally-based observation tool coming up. So you would just do the tallies, but then it also starts to provide feedback on what should you do if the students are having trouble, like frequent rejection. So if they're telling other students no, oops, let me go back a little bit, over and over, it may indicate poor discussion skills, frustration, or lack of norms. And then later in the response, it actually gave potential feedback for the teacher on how to respond to those students when you're seeing those things. This ignoring was huge in my class. They didn't even realize, they got so excited about what they wanted to say, they didn't even realize they were ignoring their friends in their group. So when you point that out to them, it's like, well, they're like, wow, I didn't even know. It's sometimes the nicest kids that just get passionate. I am guilty of this sometimes. And they, so then they don't even realize that they totally ignored someone that might have had like the best idea that would have solved the problem or answered the question. So I really like that one there. It's time to move into our next section. So this is probably my favorite one, which is designing for differentiation access. It is not just gifted and high achieving classes that can do project-based learning. Every single class can do this. So it's having those tools, and this is where AI can really help. And that kind of leads me into my next tip, which is you want to be clear and tell AI to differentiate the task and not the goal. All students are working toward the same goal. I really feel strongly they should all be doing the same project, or at least the same level of engagement project. Not one's doing a worksheet and the other is making a movie. That's not, that's not equitable. That's not what we're looking for. So this illustration shows that they're both working towards the same finish line, but one is taking this kind of ramp or path and the other has stairs, but in the end, they're going to accomplish the same goal. And so in differentiation, we say we differentiate content, process, product, or the learning environment, but AI can really help with that. So partnering with AI to differentiate, how would we do that? One is cooperative learning scripts and social stories. So if you have students that struggle with cooperation, you may need a little extra support or scaffolding for them. We talked earlier about you wouldn't want to jump right into a unit. It's just like public speaking. The first time a student who has anxiety about public speaking, you're not going to put them in front of the whole class. You might have them pick a friend, go out if you have a common area. I had common areas a lot in my classroom, or take them outside, and then they would just speak to their friend only, to one person, or to a trusted teacher. So we want to scaffold that. Another would be interest surveys. So figure out your students' interests and try to align the projects with that. Scaffold mini lessons. So if you're already having mini lessons built into your unit plan, you may need to provide extra support like front load vocabulary or other supports like chunking things into smaller bites, adjusting the reading level. Any of those things can be accomplished with AI. And then also just scaffolding the tasks that they're doing for the project-based learning unit. And then last, I think this last one, gear content to student readiness, interests, and learning profiles. There's another one, tiered projects. So I like to do a lot of tiered projects where, like, for example, a garden project. So the whole class is going to build a garden, but each student is going to research a specific flower or plant, and then we're going to decide together which ones would be best for the garden. So it's kind of like the first level is individual student, but then later it will be whole class projects. And that is another thing that AI can really help with. Again, there's prompts available for this first bullet, scaffolding tasks as well. And then this is an example of a prompt for a collaboration script. So you are an instructional coach or ESC teacher supporting students who need explicit instruction to collaborate. As a culminating activity for their social studies, they will complete a current event research project that aligns with social studies standards and makes a connection between an event and history. And the group size is 4. Again, you would adjust all of those details to meet the needs of your students. But we're going to look at a different tool right now. So we've only been talking about Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and ChatGPT so far. But there are some new things in Canva. If you happen to have Canva available and it's approved by your district for teacher use, this is really cool. This would require student access for the website it generates. So their Canva code now allows you to create these interactive tools or tasks. And in this case, I generated a choose your own adventure. So the bit.ly is here and the QR code, and we also have it in the chat for you pinned. But you can take a look closer at this later if you want. But basically, it has a story about the project that they're going to be doing. It has a collaboration tip for the student. When joining a new group, a friendly greeting helps everyone feel comfortable. Try making eye contact. And then if you arrow down here, it gives you some prompts for the student, and then they have to choose which one. And it just takes them through a series of story prompts and then the choice. And at the end, it kind of gives them a little rating and some feedback about how they did. So I really like this is, again, that scaffolding built in right here. And then I'll be honest, so the thing I really like about this, because other tools do this as well, there's a Google Canvas that's really cool. It creates JavaScript-like activities. But with this, I didn't have to tell it to make it look pretty. So in Canva, it just automatically made it look like a textbook, like an elementary textbook, which I really loved. So if you have Canva and you have not tried Canva Code, it is really cool. So I just wanted to throw that one in there a little bit. Okay, and this is, I promise, the last section. So designing for impact and authentic experiences. And our last tip, use AI to troubleshoot in real time. So I really love this because this is one where there are those teachable moments that sometimes we don't get to because it's too much to create. So AI can help you align standards with current events. So if something happens that's related to your content, it can help solidify that and help find the comparisons for you. Create mini lessons and analogies to help explain misconceptions, because sometimes students didn't understand something and you're like, oh, I didn't know, especially if it's your first time teaching that subject, you may not have expected the misconceptions, and now in real time you can have that generated a mini lesson. And then also just in time project templates. If a student has an interest in something and you want to give them an opportunity to explore that, again, we can really quickly create those templates and even align it to their interests or things they like, the color they like, the animal they like. If they love horses, it can align with that. And then some other things we can use for authentic. This one is probably one of my favorites. Finding an authentic audience and content experts. So I always wanted to have real experts come in, but then it was one of the things that got left behind because actually going out and finding them can be difficult. But there is a prompt for you that does this, and it did a really good job. I felt like I put in my area, which is Jacksonville, St. Augustine, and it really did a great job of finding both virtual experts for the project I put in, as well as some local and some things I wouldn't have thought of. So then also peer review templates, because that's a really great way to engage students. And then also ways to encourage risk taking through open-ended brainstorming activities. So especially if you have students who are cautious and don't like to take chances, it might be really good to brainstorm some of those. And again, the prompts are available for those first two, the peer review and the finding content experts. And then I'm going to jump through this one quickly, but there was a prompt for that expert. And like I said, it actually told me about local. So it was for a carnival science, probability mechanics, and then even some finance that was incorporated in this, where students would create their own kind of carnival games to try to make money. And I didn't really even think about fair. I was thinking more engineers, physicists, things like that, but they actually suggested like the Midway Fair carnival people. So that was just kind of cool because it actually came up with things that I wasn't expecting. It has Adventure Landing, which is our local, amusement park, St. Augustine Alligator Farm, which is our local, I guess you could call it a zoo. So anyway, you've been there, the alligator farm? Really? Oh wow. Yep. Okay. They have sloths now, which is really cool. So we are, oh my gosh, I'm 1 minute over, but we're going to wrap up. So I want to end it with this quote: powerful projects don't require more from teachers. They require better systems, clear purpose, and trust in the learning process. And again, AI can really help with all of these things. Really quickly, I'll run through these objectives again. They are there for you to see. I think we nailed all of them. Yeah, I think we nailed all of them. And what I really want to do is we're going to jump to here in case you didn't get any of those webinar resources. They're up there again. And then in just a minute, I'm going to put just my contact info as well, because if you weren't able to access these or you have any questions at all or need more from me of what you saw tonight, definitely reach out. So I'm going to put that up now. Again, snap a picture if you haven't gotten these yet so that you can you put those links in later. But again, if you are still struggling to get those resources, you can email me there. And I really appreciate those that were able to attend live. You made us feel like we weren't alone, so thank you. And then anyone watching the recording too. Hopefully you at least learned one new thing. That's always my goal. And thank you, Jeremy. You added so much to this. That was amazing. I feel like we need to partner now and do this.
Right? Well, it was great talking with you. Yeah. So first of all, thank you everybody who joined us, for those that joined us live to engage, but then especially for those that are going to join us after today. Please join the conversation. We're all in this together. Today we got to explore how AI can be used in those big, ambitious PBL units, and how we can take it from maybe someday into let's do this now. And Kristen did a great job. Thank you for all those resources as well. As we wrap up, I do want to leave you with just a quick reminder, and we touched on this during the session, but always take the time to evaluate and select the tools that align with your local privacy policies, your educational standards, and your community expectations. Thoughtful choices make big difference in our classrooms and communities. And lastly, before you go, I'd love to invite everyone to join us at our NCCE conference, the premier EdTech event here in the Northwest. It's happening February 25th through the 27th here in Seattle at the Seattle Convention Center. And whether you're looking for on-site, virtual, or on-demand professional development, NCC has something for everyone. Don't forget, our community resources are always available to you, from our free newsletter, which you can subscribe to, and our community blog. You can find it all at www.ncce.org. And on your favorite social channels, just look for NCCE or NCCE_EdTech. And thanks for joining. Kristen, great conversation. Looking forward to hopefully seeing you out here in Seattle sometime. But have a great evening, everybody.